So, you describe a growing mental health crisis. Many readers know the struggle of trying to find help for a loved one, often not knowing where to begin. So, why is this such a widespread issue today?
Well, let me jump in on kind of the data points on that one.
Yeah.
It has been pretty shocking over really the last 10 years, but especially in the last 5, 6 years, the pandemic kind of accelerated what was already happening. That right now, according to, for example, some of the Bureau of Vital Statistics groups and National Institutes of Mental Health, that kind of stuff, there's about 60 million people today, 60 million adults. This doesn't even include like adolescents and kids. About 60 million adults who have significant clinically valid mental and emotional health concerns. Like this is anything from, the person who's got an addiction issue to significant depression, anxiety. This is diagnosed mental health issues. And only 30 million of those are getting help. There's 30
Wow.
million people out there who can't afford to get to a counselor, have tried and can't get in anytime soon. And we just think that there's an opportunity here that maybe the church hasn't really grappled with because so many pastors and church leaders and probably the rest of us, like instinctively over the years, we've thought for people who aren't Jim, Jim is a clinical psychologist, and he's trained many Christian clinical psychologists over the years and Christian clinicians. But people who aren't in that space, we think, but I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor, right? Like the average pastor is kind of alarmed at the idea of trying to step into this space. And what we're saying is, listen, a huge percentage of the people that are dealing with pain don't necessarily need that more high end clinical care.
Hmm.
There's a huge percentage of people who maybe they do that could be something that they need as part of the package, but the vast majority of people need someone just to walk alongside. And if you're a clinician, one of the things Jim and many other clinicians have told me is that if you're doing your job as a clinician and someone comes to you with, for example, a pornography addiction, if you're doing your job, you're going to help them, you're going to build some skills, you're going to deal with some things, but you're also going to say you need to be part of a group. You need to have friends to walk alongside. And so the church has to step in and go, oh my gosh, what a great opportunity for people who know Jesus not to somehow turn into mini clinicians, but just be friends and listeners and care for one another in the way that we're supposed to. That essentially is the core of what we're saying needs to be kind of a little bit more operationalized in the church without being afraid of that piece of it.
Hmm. I love how you described that, Shanti, and uh, walk exactly with what you're articulating. I was looking at some numbers yesterday, and uh, we know the 18 to 25-year-old group, uh, typically the the diagnosable mental health need historically has been around 10%, 12% of the population, according to data from National Institute of Mental Health US Facts. So I was looking at at their charts yesterday around it, and uh, we know that right before the pandemic, from roughly 2010 to 2015, we saw an increase from 10%, 12% to about 20 to 25% uh, of the young adult and middle-aged adult population. The senior adults, people that are 50 and above, they stayed the same, right around the same. They tracked level. Then it increased from 20 to 25% to 35% during COVID. And now we have the data takes about 2 years to be able to analyze. So we have 2024 data now, and it has dropped and flattened a little bit. So it hasn't dropped from 30. It's no longer increasing from 25 to 35. Imagine the angle going up. No, it's now leveled off, and maybe it's going to dip, but we don't know what that dip looks like. It may next year might spike back up and increase more, or we don't know at that point.
But it's still I was looking at that data too. It's still somewhere around 30%. It's almost a third of the population.
Yeah. It is not good news. It's just maybe it's not as continuing to be worsening news. We don't know. Another piece of data that just came across my desk or my cell phone in the data generation was a new study, a meta-analysis from Harvard and Baylor in the Flourishing Study, and they looked at churches and people who regularly attend church, and there is a significant decrease in mental health need and the capacity for life flourishing if you go to church. Now, it might be just because of the socialization that occurs when you're participating in church. Maybe that's a part of it, without a doubt. And in addition to that, there's Jesus. There's grace. There is human restoration. There is attending to our shame. There is a sense of, you know me and you still love me. There is all of those things that come with showing up at church, engaging in biblical text, praying with one another, accepting others as you too have been accepted. So that's what we know. The stuff that you do at Pure Desire really works. It works in ways beyond specific behavioral addictions. It works. It addresses a host of mental health and life development concerns that enhances life joy.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that's staggering, some of those numbers, to think about 30 million people that may be in need of care but are suffering alone. And I think that's consistent with what we have found. You know, we did some research with Barna last year, and one of the questions asked, does anyone know of your struggle? And half the people, 49%, said no one even knows I'm struggling. And another question was, is anyone helping you avoid pornography? And of those who self-acknowledge that they struggle, 82% said no one was helping them. And so by and large, I think whether we're talking pornography or other mental health fields, we end up stuck and alone and not sure where to go. And it also makes me think of that great quote by Gabor Mate, who says that trauma is not what happens to us. Trauma is what happens inside of us in the absence of an empathetic witness. That really what's traumatic are the things that we suffer alone. And to hear that 30 million people potentially are suffering alone, man, if that doesn't motivate us to do something, I'm not sure what will.
Yeah. Well, and especially because to help, because there's probably some church leaders listening to this. There's probably some pastors listening to this who are still like, I don't know. They're like, I'm not an addiction expert, right?
Totally.
And recognizing the power of, just to put it at the most basic level, the power of friendship, the power of not being isolated, the power of not feeling like you're alone, that you've got a friend who cares. And here's really the issue that I kind of, as I was doing some of the research and talking to so many pastors, and we ended up doing this big survey, and it ended up being a giant study of more than 2,000 pastors and church leaders, to recognize that we as believers, we churchgoers walking alongside one another, we have an incredible opportunity that a clinician does not. Because right now what we found, just so you guys know, is that in this big survey, and we did all streams of the church, Protestant, Catholic, all different ethnicities, large, small, whatever. 88% of the pastors said, I feel like my job, when someone comes to me with one of these issues, my job is to refer them out. Like I can listen, I can talk to them once or twice, but like that's the primary role of the church. Is that's what 88% of the pastors either totally agreed, or somewhat agreed with that. And that, like we said, that's awesome, right? Jim has been training Christian clinicians for 30 plus years, right? We're not suggesting that that's not a good idea. Of course it is. However, that clinician can't come over to their house for dinner on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? They can't meet up with them when someone is struggling and just needs someone to talk to. They're a paid helper. They're a paid professional who can help build skills. But one of the things that churches we need to grapple with is that the most healing happens in context of this person knows my shame, this person knows everything I'm struggling with, and they love me and care about me anyway.
Yeah. Often, the first time I said this, I think Shanti was surprised, and so I'll say it again. I think she knows what I'm going to say.
You really need to say it every time we do one of these interviews, Jim, because it's pretty powerful. If I
have my choice of recommending to someone to see a really good psychologist or have a really good friend, I'm going to do the friend every time.
Wow.
And I think I am a really good psychologist, but the power of a friend extended over a lifetime is far more effective than 10 sessions with me.
Mm.
And I think I do a lot of good things and can help, and I'm glad to take this out, and please come and see me. But oh my goodness, the power of a friend is far more significant on all of our development than a clinician.